Validity and stuff, that's what you mean to me. It doesn't make sense to anyone but me. Cause I'm that way about you, you're handsome, such a knockout, and girls rave about you night and day. There is no other, but when a guy like you, your music so appealing, you.
Hi, I'm Finis Jhung, and today is Ballet for Life Day today. Ballet for Life, actually, but there was a little break in between. We're going to talk about that. So, we're going to go back, just a little review for you. First of all, by this time it's 1968. We're in residence in Monte Carlo, the Harkness Ballet. And if you've seen the movie The Red Shoes, then you know that Vicky Page, you know, she gets so upset, she runs down the stairs and she jumps off the balcony and is hit by the train. So here I am in between, you know, because now I'm a principal dancer and I've just had my private lesson with David Howard. And I'm lying by the pool, you know, and I say, you know, Uncle Ka, having my Coca-Cola, and, you know, it's a beautiful sunny day. I mean, what can go wrong in Monte Carlo, right? And then it occurs to me, and I'm thinking about, you know, the fact that I've converted 22 of the dancers in the company are all Buddhists. They're all chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and they're all so much happier than they ever thought possible. So I'm just thinking, you know, and I'm saying, is what I'm doing really worth it? I mean, I go on stage, tonight I'm going to perform, and people are going to like it, you know, and enjoy it, but then it's gone. Whereas if people became Buddhists, you know, well, that's going to change their life. It's going to change their whole life. So I decide I'm going to quit. I'm going to be like Victoria Page. I'm going to jump off the balcony. You know, I'm going to quit ballet. So before we do that, I have to tell you, I'm going to go back a little bit, because in the Harkness Ballet, besides touring all the glamour spots of Europe, even Egypt, we toured in the USA, and we did one-night stands. We did bus tours, you know. And I remember, we had a group of Buddhists. When we hit, I think it was Tulane in Louisiana, and then later on we went to Duke in North Carolina. You know, we get off the bus, we go to the hotel, we dump our things. The first thing we do is we case out what we're going to eat. You know, after the show, we make sure we have food. And then what we did, we have our Buddhist newspaper, and we're going to do what we call shakabuku. So we walk around the campus looking for people. We say, hi, you know, how are you? How would you like to come to a Buddhist meeting? And we have a show that night, you know. So we have the show, and we give them our hotel room, and then some of these students start coming. And we actually converted people. This is maybe early 1968. So we did that, you know. In other words, wherever we went, you had to hear about Buddhism. So anyway, let's go back now to 1969. So this man, this is J.B. Charoni, Jano, we called him, Jano. He was Papa Charoni, and he had worked with the Ballet Russe. So he was one of the most famous, you know, company managers in the history of ballet, and such a wonderful man, okay? And he took such good care of us. So, and here I want to show you a picture. This is actually the last time that I wore makeup and danced, and I'm with a group of our Harkness Ballet Buddhists. So you're going to see in the back row is Jimmy Dunn and Robin Welch. That's me in the middle. Again, I had hair, and I'm wearing ribbons, as Eric told us to wear, Eric Bruin. And then that's Marina Eglevsky, and behind her is Warren Conover. And also with us was David Howard. David was a Buddhist, you know. Yeah, he chanted Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. So here we are at the head temple, dancing, performing. Okay, and actually the very last time, this is my last assemblée in the air. Again, wearing makeup, and I thought that was it. I thought that was it. Okay, I mean that's fitting. My final, on-stage performance should be in Japan, and these people were all chanting. So now we're going to do. We have our final season. So it's March 1969, and we've just finished our New York season here at the Music Box Theater, and we had great success in Grand Pas Espanol, in Variations for Four. So that was it. By that time, I said, I'm going to quit after this. So we had to do some filming. And it's a good thing we did because we also filmed Zealous Variations, where I do the double tour, double tour, double tour right to second position, double tour left, and then jump off the stage. And that was recorded. And you can see it. If you go to Facebook, scroll all the way down, okay? But you can see me doing that. I had overcome my double tour problem. Excuse me, just let me get out. So I'm fighting allergies. It's spring. Leaves in the trees, flowers coming on. So, in March, Larry Rhodes was then the director, and I said, Larry, I'm quitting. So I packed my bag, and that was it. So, in the meantime, I've been researching, how am I going to live? What am I going to do? So I went to an employment agency. I could type. I could type 100 words a minute. I was the fastest typist in the U.S. Army. Okay, one of those big Underwoods. Because in Hawaii, in the 8th grade, when I grew up, everybody learned to type. Thank goodness, right? So I had an interview with Mr. Myron Piker of Pooled Capital Corporation. And he was on Madison Avenue. The funny thing, of course, is that they gave me the wrong address. So I went to the building. I said, well, I can't find this man. I can't find his office. So it turned out they gave me the wrong number, right? So I did. And I go up, and this is Mr. Piker with his wife Joan, and she was in advertising, and he had worked on Wall Street, and actually he invented the Scotch cooler. I don't know if you remember that. You're dating yourself if you do. But he had been very successful, and then now he wanted to have his own investment company. So he needed an office manager. Just had a small office. So here I am, in my suit and tie. And, he didn't say anything about the fact that I'm Asian, and my resume is that I was a ballet dancer. So he has me type, and I blow him away because I'm going, I could type so fast. And that was the day of carbon paper, right? No computers then, typewriters and big Xerox machines. So he hires me. And now I have a 9-to-5 office job, a weekly paycheck, and health benefits. And Mr. Piker will eventually become a lifelong friend. He and his wife Joan, we became friends, and in fact, they were godparents for Jason. So only a few years ago, David Howard, as I told you, he was a Buddhist. We were living up on the east side on the 32nd floor, this gorgeous apartment, right? You can look out, you see all of Manhattan. I had to move out. Right? I mean, I wasn't making money anymore as a principal dancer. So I did find a cheaper apartment, but even that wasn't cheap enough. So at this time, I have to tell you, I was really a Buddhist fanatic. Fanatic means you're devoting your whole life. You're really zealous, like Zealous Variations, So the whole idea of my existence was to convert people, to get so involved. And by this time, the organization was called Nichiren Shoshu of America. And I had, accepted the fact, okay, it's an organization because it's the only way that we can spread the word. So what happened is then, once I got the job with Pike, and then I found out, we called him Pike, Myron Piker, I had to give up this nice apartment that I had, where we converted a lot of people. That was on West 70th. So by this time I'm looking at my wall, and there's Eric Bruin and Giselle, you know, and here are all these pictures that Michael Avedon had taken of me, and here are all these my ballet books, you know, my whole history of ballet. And I said, you know, in order to really convince people about this Buddhism, I have to be nobody. I'm not Finis Jhung, you know, former principal dancer with the Joffrey and the Harkness ballet companies and San Francisco, and I was on Broadway and I did the movie. That person doesn't exist. So I took all the pictures off the wall and all the books, and I took them downstairs to the furnace room, and I dumped them into the fire. And there were the films I'd taken of Eric Bruin, Double Soda Boss, the films I had of Lona Isaacson dancing, you know, by the water in Watch Hill, Rhode Island. All these precious films, all these precious books and photos. Eric signed photo to me. They went up in flames. And I said, okay, I'm nobody. I'm just your everyday Buddhist. I'm nobody. You see, that's the way I do things. I go, you know, as you know, a lot of you know by now, right? I either do it or I don't do it. So that happened. So then I was free. I was also not making much money. So we had, at that time, our Buddhist organization was divided: young men's division, young women's division, separate activities. You know, the men were supposed to do a brass band, and the women did fife and drum corps. You know, kind of this American stuff, because music, you know, was part of this organization. So I'm 32 years old. In the summer of 1969, I've moved from David. I've gone down there. Then I've gone down to a third floor apartment on West 70th. But even that was too expensive, so I had to move out of that. And with three of my, we call them YMD, right? We found this apartment, you know, a railroad apartment on West 81st Street, and I started sleeping on the floor. My bed, actually, because I was a leader, I had a little bedroom, which was really, you know, it was a long hallway. Three of the guys slept in the other room where the altar was, the Gohonzon was, and they sleeping bags. No room for beds, right? And then I had a little tiny, you know, part of the hallway. That was my bedroom, okay, behind lockers. That was my privacy. And there I was sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag after the Harkness Ballet, after all the five-star hotels, right? I'm very happy on the floor, sleeping, sharing an apartment with these three guys. And what we did, it was great because it was right by the 79th Street subway on Broadway. So after work, you know, we go out the street with our newspaper and we go up and say, hello, would you like to come to a Buddhist meeting? You know, and we'd bring people into the apartment. And then, you know, we always sang songs, you know, and everything's very military. So, you know, you had to lead a song like this, you know, very vigorously to show your life force, right? And then we would introduce them, and we would all give our personal experiences. We talk about the benefits received, the obstacles we overcame, and that was part of the meeting. And then we talk about the philosophy, you know, what it was like, and we tell, but you know, the good thing about this is you chant for your desires. You want something, you chant for it. You don't have to deny yourself, you know, and that heaven and hell are right now. You can change your life from hell to heaven. And we converted people there, you know, so we were able to present them with the Gohonzons, and that was part of it. So the thing is that as I became more active too, you know, we would have a lot of mini conventions, and we'd put on shows like From the Man of La Mancha, all these kind of very positive mission songs. We had Hello Dolly, and we had all the young, these guys who had never danced in their life, right? So I kind of went back to dancing, along with Richard Nicholas, who had been a ballet teacher, and we set musical numbers. And we also did things like we had parades, and everything was very kind of, you know, it was very Japanese in the sense of being very, you know, like samurai, that kind of fighting spirit. So we even had these marches where we had the guys banging sticks, you know, which was really pretty scary, you know. And then we had them waving flags. But because what this proved and what I learned is that when you have this faith, you know, and you experience changes in your life through chanting, well, you feel you can do anything, you know. So you have this confidence. Plus, we have this mutual support. You know, that's why we'd sing these songs, and then once a year, we'd all try to make the pilgrimage to go to Japan to see the original Gohonzon, which was in a huge temple, and that was part of our activity. So by this time, then, okay, so I'm working every day. This is 1969 to 1972. Okay, so I'm a group leader in Nichiren Shoshu of America with 15 members. My job with Mr. Piker is going very well, and he keeps me busy with correspondence. You know, he handwrites a letter because he didn't really have that much business, you know, and then I type it up, you know, and so eventually he and his wife would come and see the shows that we would put on. And they were so impressed because, you know, we had a whole orchestra. People who never had played music, they learned to play music, you know, and then we had the men, and the boys, they were actually boys, they were young, you know, like college age, right? And they were all learning to dance, so to speak, you know, group dancing. So I say, time flies when you're a Buddhist. Each night out on the streets, we look for people who are interested in learning about Buddhism. We give them our newspaper and show them the meeting place, which is all our different apartments. And the thing that happens, of course, when you invite strangers from the street is that when you're not home, some of these strangers are going to come back and go in your window and take your TV and, you know, and rob you. So that happened like 3 times, okay? Because you're bringing in people you don't know. You have no idea. And also remember, this is the time where people are starting to take acid trips. Anyway, here's a picture of me. As you can see, I was actually quite happy giving a Buddhist lecture. For some reason, the leader, Mr. Sudo, had me give the Buddhist lectures. I mean, I would study, but I you know, I could do it. So we had musical activities, and we constantly did what we call shakabuku. The whole idea is convert as many people as you can, because this is the way we're going to have world peace. If everybody became a Buddhist, and in a sense it's really true, if you really just blamed yourself for everything and took responsibility for yourself and felt that you had the power to change your life for the better, then you wouldn't blame other people. You wouldn't hate other people. You know, so that's a good part about something like this, and where we're all encouraging each other to fulfill our dreams, you know. So there's this kind of mutual support, which is, it's a goodness, isn't it? Which we really need so badly today in the world. So I remember we call it the gohons, the scroll, enshrinement, you know, and you have to have a little altar. And one of the enshrinements I did was down the East Village, you know, and for this hippie girl, her name was Jana. I mean, we're still good friends today. She was wearing a big, you know, witch hat, you know, because she was tripping. I didn't know that, you know. So she was kind of like this, you know. I mean, her body was there, but I don't know where her mind was. But anyway, you know, I unrolled her scroll and put it up, showed her how to do it, and she's kind of like this. And she was the only one, you know, because as I said, this is the day of acid, you know, LSD. And I remember he was on drugs, you know. So these were easy people to convert, right? Because they were all just kind of drifting, you know, or nodding out. So anyway, we had our shows. Mr. Piker liked it. So now and that's what I kept doing, okay, all the time. So now it's 1971 winter, and I'm walking to the office. By this time, Mr. Piker had moved to Madison Avenue. So I pass the bookstore, I think it was called Scribner's or whatever, on Fifth Avenue. And I look in the window and I say, oh my God, that's me. And this photo was taken by Zachary Freeman, who took at the same time that he did my brief biography, my first big Buddhist benefit. So this is 1972, the calendar, right? So how strangely, because in January, then Mr. Piker says he's going to close his office because he really wasn't doing a lot of business, and he said, you're going to have to find a job. So I go to my Buddhist leader, whose name was Mr. Sudo, and he was shocked, Well, first of all, he was shocked when I quit dancing, quit ballet, because they never asked me to do that. I decided to do that, so I could devote myself. I mean, as I felt, I had to be no one. I had to be no one so that I could convince other people and really create my own benefits, all right? So then I asked him, I said, well, what do you think? What should I do? I don't have this job with Mr. Pike anymore. He says, well, why don't you teach ballet? Because for 3 years, everybody in the ballet world, they didn't know what happened to me. There were all these rumors, I became a monk, I went into a monastery or something, I was gone. I never went to the ballet. Nobody saw me. Nobody saw me. So I said, teach ballet. Because for 3 years, yes, I was involved with dancing, but I hadn't taken a ballet class. I never went to see a ballet performance. I had no time, right? Because every night and every weekend I was doing Buddhism, converting people, singing, giving my experience, leading people, teaching people. It's Buddhism. As I said, I was a fanatic. So I remember I'd taken class with Wilson Morelli when I was in California. And he was a really nice guy. And he had a studio on 14th Street and 6th Avenue. So I called him. I said, hi, Wilson. It's Finis Jhung. Do you remember me? He said, oh, yeah. I said, do you think I could teach ballet in your studio? He said, well, come down. Let's talk. Come and look at a class. So I go to the studio. It's no longer there. Like everything else in New York, it's no longer there. And I'm sitting down, there's a pianist, and here are all these dancers. And they're saying, oh my gosh, what is that step called? What are they doing? And I'm looking, and I can't remember what these steps are called, So he says, I can let you start teaching in 2 months. Because I want to give time to advertise you. So I ran to the bookstore and I looked up all the books on ballet. I was in a panic because I said, oh my God, how am I going to teach ballet? I don't remember what in the steps. I don't remember how you're supposed to give the bar or whatever. So I started reading, all these books, and I called David Howard. I said, David, I'm going to teach ballet. What's your thought? What's your ideas? So he was whatever I wanted to know. He helped me. So in March 1972, I taught my first class at Morelli Studios. There were 4 students, and I went, how am I going to live with only 4 students? Not only that, I was so unsure of musicality. Everything was in 3/4. And I had a wonderful pianist. But I said 3/4, 3/4. Everything was in 3/4, And I started to find my way back, and things started to get an idea. And then gradually, professional dancers started coming. Martine Van Hamel, B. Rodriguez, Paul Taylor came to my class. The first people, Paul Taylor dancers. And Linda Kent, also Hector Mercado. They were part of the first group of professionals. And then the word started spreading. And by the fall of that year, the room was packed. And I had asked Wilson, I said, well, can I move in the room next door? It's bigger. And he said, no, because somebody else is renting that. So what happened is that then I got into my mind that I have to make my own studio. Also, just as a side here, because I'm going to go back and forth, because 1972 was also the year I got married. See, I do everything all at once, right? I find a new job, I start teaching ballet, and I decide I'm going to get married. And the woman that I picked, her name was Yuriko Honsho, she was, of course, the leader of the Young Women's Division. Leader and leader, We were the big cheeses in New York Buddhism. We converted the most people. And she was so bright and so happy when she was smiling, so charming, like this. And so I really thought, she's really so lovable. Um, so in the November that year, we were married. Okay, I'm going to show you some pictures. And of course, we had a Buddhist ceremony. So here we are. And we were married actually in what's called a kaikon in the meeting hall. Well, first we had to have a civil wedding downtown at City Hall. So that's Yuriko, all done up like a traditional Japanese bride. And her mother came from Japan. Okay, so that's that one. And then here, we're chanting. We're on our knees. We're chanting as part of our wedding ceremony, right? Like this. And the lead in front, this man, is Tero Saki, who'd been a Marine pilot, very well educated. He led the Buddhist group in Washington, D.C. And he's going to come back into my story, okay? So here, he's a friend. He's leading the wedding ceremony, okay? And then this is, where you do the drinking the sake, right? Like that. That's part of the ceremony, okay? And then here we are in our first apartment, quite comfortable and lovey-dovey, okay? So this is all in 72, 73, and Yuriko and I, of course, she's working in an office, and she was a night person. Stay up all night, yak, because she was also a leader, right? So she has to talk to all her members, and they're crying in her ear, and she's got to give them, we call it guidance. You give it guidance, right? And of course, I was busy also because by that time, I had opened my studio on 72nd Street, which is my first studio. It was above the Royal Bakery. So we had 3 million cockroaches, and we called it the landing field because it's a brownstone. So a very narrow building, right? But here is where, again, all the ABT dancers, Chuck Ward, Clark Tippett, even Gelsey came into class when David wasn't in town, all the Harkness ballet dancers, the continuing dancers. So I was developing a reputation, as a teacher of professional dancers. Excuse me a minute. Try not to cough in your ear. So, in the spring of 1974, we have a baby. Our first baby is born, and we call him Jason. We had asked Mr. Suda. I said, "Do you want to?" He was our godfather, the godfather. And I said, "What name do you think?" He said, "Either Paul or Jason." So we said Jason. So, what happened is, by this time, also in 1972, and here I go again. Me, I'm always a troublemaker. But the problem we were finding, and a lot of us, is that the organization wanted us to be very, Japanese in behavior, besides sitting on the floor and singing Japanese songs. And the leaders were all called hombucho, sogo, hombucho, all these Japanese words. And we said, because one of the ideas of Buddhism is called zuihubini. You're supposed to fit into the culture where you are. You're not supposed to stick out. And then when we had like a Denver convention, here we are, walking around New York in white shirts, white cowboy boots, and cowboy hats, because you're supposed to dress like you're going to dress at the convention. And if it was a Denver convention, of course, we're going to ride horses. I had horrible hay fever. But anyway, for most of us who were college educated and intelligent people, we were finding it difficult because, in other words, saying we want you to act Japanese, not necessarily Buddhism, but so everybody was hype, you stand up and say hype, like you're gonna get your sword out, and fight the world. So it was very, in that sense, had a very militaristic aspect, and even things like we were called Yusohan, so we had to protect our leader. So, Mr. Suda, our meeting place was on 57th Street and 8th Avenue. And he lived in the, what is it called, Astoria? We're right next to Steps today, that big building. So, the idea, if you're a Yusohan, you have to protect your leader, which meant that after the meeting, Then, of course, our leaders were hungry. So they would go to the Japanese restaurant, and drink a lot and eat a lot. And in the meantime, we're sitting there, trying not to fall asleep because we all have work the next day, right? So and then we have to take him home to make sure he got from 57th Street to 73rd Street safely, okay? And there was really nothing wrong with him. He could have done it himself, but this was what you were supposed to call our training, to toughen us up. So in the meantime, the next day at Mr. Piker's, I have to take Vivarin, that one of those bad things for you that go, to keep you awake, like that. So it was kind of a very abusive practice, I mean, we liked it, but also we didn't like it. So we kept trying to say, we should really change what we're doing and try to make it more Americanized, more digestible. I mean, the philosophy, we cannot change. Why do we want to change the philosophy? And the practice is fine. We understand that. Saying a sutra in words you don't understand, that's okay. That's okay. But as far as the other aspects, which were, as I said, were too militaristic, in behavior, they didn't like that. Well, anyway, what happened? As I said, we have this baby, Jason, and 3 weeks later, we had a nurse because Yuriko wasn't very healthy. And she says, I'm worried because your son has a very high fever. So we rushed in the cab, we went to the hospital, and they found out he had meningitis. So they put him in the, in intensive care. And that night he died. And I remember looking in his eyes, that was the last look. So we were devastated, our first child. And normally bad things aren't supposed to happen to you. So this Mr. Osaki, the one that I pointed out, who led our wedding ceremony, he called me and he said, he didn't say, I'm sorry. He says, this is your bachi. This is your punishment for daring to go against the organization. This is why your baby died. You are being punished because you were wrong. So that was the kind of, consolation we got from this big Buddhist leader. So anyway, life went on. We continued, to do as we thought we were supposed to. So on May 27th, 1976, Jason, we call him Jason number 2. Our Jason, the one you know today, he was born. So by 1978, though, most of all my members, they just had it. And Yuriko and I did too. We said, we just can't do this. We can't stay with this organization. Because also we thought that there were things that are not right, like the big leader, in America. He had his Japanese girl sitting out, sleeping on the floor outside his door at night. The kind of thing we hear about today. And also they drank a lot, those leaders, So we're thinking, this is leadership behavior. So we became very disillusioned. And by that time, we were getting tired of spending so much energy and work on putting on these shows. And we said, why are we doing this? Why aren't we just studying Buddhism? Learning more about Buddhism, the philosophy. So in 1978, we had a revolution. And a bunch of us quit. We left the organization. And the problem is that when we left the organization, prior to that, Yuriko and I, every morning and every evening when we chanted, we were facing the same direction, to world peace. So we did it. Whatever we did, we're doing together to convert more people, to spread the word. But once we left the organization, we looked at each other. Who are you? You're always still awake at night. I have to get up early in the next morning to teach. So things like that, because I was a morning person. I had a 10 o'clock class. I had to get up. So we started to find out all these things that all of a sudden, because we didn't have the organizational activities, so we started to say, I don't like this about you. I don't like that about you, And we were bickering. And we thought, this is not good for Jason, And we tried. to stay. But by 1985, and by that time I had gone a long way with my ballet teaching, um, we were divorced. We were divorced. And prior to that, Jason was your typical Asian student. Is he going to be a doctor? Is he going to be a lawyer? We sent him to Dalton, East Side. He went to Calhoun. Then he went to Collegiate, where JFK Jr. went. To the best schools. Later he went to Vassar. But what happened is that after the divorce, Jason just lost it. He was no longer interested in studying. So I had to start telling me he's not your typical Asian. He likes to play. He likes baseball. He's a good time guy. So he started living for baseball. And in fact, after he graduated from Vassar, he was, and my thought was, listen, look at me. When I was 9 years old in Hawaii, I told my mother, I want to be a ballet dancer. Is that crazy? Is that crazy? So I said, so who am I now? And after we're divorced, and I took charge of Jason, single parenting him, because I wanted to raise him, right? And it's a good thing I did, because Yuriko's father started to get sick, so she went back to Japan. But anyway, I thought, I'm going to let Jason decide whatever he wants to do. I'm going to let him learn his own way. I'm not going to stand in his way. And I will do my best to support him. And so he went to California for a while, and that's how he learned to temp at a law firm. It's funny how all these things, add up. And then he got a job at Major League Baseball Productions, which I thought, great. And that's where they process all the footage. So first he was called what you call a videotape logger, then he became a supervisor, then he became the manager of the library and acquisition. So all the footage that came in, it was his job to make sure that all these people, that they properly cataloged it. And he actually helped set up a system like that, which they didn't have. So is this funny now, knowing what he's doing for me, right? So in 2016, then I said, I don't want you to get a job just to get a job. I want you to see what you can do for yourself. So he incorporated. He became Ninja Pirate Productions, and his thought was that he would start to do video work. And it took him a long time, and wasting a lot of time with friends. We're going yakety yak 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 yakety, all these dreams and things. But I said, it's okay. I'm not going to hassle him. I'm going to let him find his own way. And like recently, last fall, anyway, he was in 2015. Major League Baseball Productions got a new boss. So they restructured, and you all heard that story before. What happens? We start firing people. So who was fired first? Jason. He was the first one they let go, right? And this guy, they really owed him because he really organized them, right? But such is the way it is. So he had been living, in Weehawken, I think. So I said, well, you better come into the city and get an apartment, because how are you going to find contacts, if you're living over there? So he came in, and for a while he had his own apartment, but not enough really happened. He also, in the apartment, was the first time he shot myself a massage video. Do you have that video? If you have aches and pains, you get that video, okay? Because I show you how to do everything. So he produced that and edited it. And he also did ballet bar foot strength with Bernard Gilmore of the Ailey Company, which is beautiful. And all the things about your feet, you don't have that one, get that one too. So we did that. That was the first time we started shooting. So, little did we know, that things would get to where they are now. And now, of course, with the COVID disease and everybody being shut in, it has just turned out to be so strange, because this is the apartment we've been living in since 1972. It's a 7.5 room apartment on the Upper West Side, and people would kill us to live here, okay? So Jason now lives here, because what happened is that he actually had a good job working for KPMG, but then that ended. So then he was going to, he was in the process and getting ready to interview for another job when the disease hit. So that ended that, right? no interview, no job, no company. So what turned out, which I want to just tell you again, over and over through my life, and especially since studying Buddhism, as you know, if you've been following my story, I was able to overcome every obstacle or every problem. And in Buddhism, we say, turning poison into medicine or changing your destiny. So this is constantly happening. And so here we are now, in the middle of this dreadful disease, which is really frightening and very hard for many of you and very stressful. But here we are now because Jason is here. Because, I know nothing about the internet. I mean, I'm going to be 83 next week. I'm still trying to learn, all of this. So without Jason being here, you wouldn't have any of this, any of these videos we've been doing. Yes, I mean, I have videos you could buy, but not these live classes. And also, he's like my guardian, He won't let me out of the house. I haven't left the apartment since the disease happened because my internist says, you shouldn't take any risk. You just stay isolated until things really, really calm down. So Jason won't let me leave the apartment. I can sit on the fire escape. That's it. But anyway, it's a blessing because, as you know, I mean, he can do everything, and he has this wonderful personality, and he's like my house manager. I mean, he takes care of the food and everything. But it's just strange. I just have to tell you again that all of this, trusting him to find his own way and to see him through, whatever he went through, and that it's all developing, both of us, and we're learning to use what we've learned through life and our skills to share it with you. So the parting message, and next week I'm gonna go into my life. I'm gonna go back to ballet. All right. So I'm gonna talk about that, my teaching. So always our closing message. If you enjoyed this session, because all the work that we put into this, please pay for it. Pay what you can at finisjhung.com/live. Okay. And all my instructional videos are now selling for half price. Streaming videos only at finisjhung.com. DVDs only on Amazon. And tomorrow we will do your favorite age-defying therapeutic stretches. So thank you for listening. I hope you learned something. I hope you feel better. And take care. And we'll see you tomorrow.